When the water level of Lake Okeechobee dropped by nearly 4 feet in December 2024, satellite cameras captured something that water managers never predicted.
In December 2024, satellites caught something moving beneath Lake Okeechobee, a dark mass miles wide, drifting under the surface of Florida's largest freshwater lake. It was not algae, it was not a current, it was not anything the Army Corps of Engineers had ever logged before. Within 48 hours, it was visible from orbit. Within a week, whatever it was had reached both the Atlantic and the Gulf, and 2 coastlines started dying at once. What you are about to see should not exist in a managed lake. It was not supposed to be there, and it is still moving. The lake that killed thousands. Lake Okeechobee is the largest freshwater lake in Florida. It covers 730 square miles. From the southern shore, you cannot see the northern horizon, only sky, water, and the slow-moving haze of Florida heat. The Calusa called it Miami. The Spanish called it Laguna del Espíritu Santo. The Seminole called it Okeechobee, which means big water. The name stuck. Here is the catch. For more than a century, this lake has been the beating heart of South Florida's water system. It feeds the Everglades. It supplies drinking water to over 8 million people. It is connected by man-made canals to the Atlantic Ocean on the east coast and the Gulf of Mexico on the west. When something goes wrong at Lake Okeechobee, it does not stay at Lake Okeechobee. It goes everywhere. What most people don't realize is how shallow the lake actually is. The average depth is only about 9 feet. 9 feet for 730 square miles. That made the lake extraordinarily sensitive to weather and extraordinarily dangerous during storms. On September 16, 1928, a Category 5 hurricane made landfall near Palm Beach with sustained winds of 145 miles per hour directly over Lake Okeechobee. The lake had no containment system. It was surrounded by low-lying agricultural land, occupied by black migrant workers harvesting beans and sugarcane in the rich muck soil of the Everglades. The hurricane's winds pushed the lake's waters against the southern shore. The natural banks collapsed. A wall of water swept across the farmland. The official death toll was 2,500. The actual number was almost certainly higher, possibly over 3,000. Most of the victims were black agricultural workers whose deaths were never formally recorded. Let that sink in. An entire community drowned in the dark, and the records did not even bother to count them. In the aftermath, the federal government ordered the Army Corps of Engineers to build the Herbert Hoover Dike, a 143-mile earthen levee that would completely encircle Lake Okeechobee, transforming it into a controlled reservoir. By the 1960s, the lake was fully contained. Water could only leave through outlets and spillways managed by the Army Corps. The lake that had killed thousands was now under human control. Or so we believed. If you want to know what the satellites actually caught moving down there, take a second to subscribe and hit the bell right now. Because what comes next is the part nobody is talking about. And it gets worse from here. The trap we built here is what nobody tells you about the dike. We did not just contain the lake, we turned it into a trap. Before the dike, Okeechobee's waters had flowed naturally southward into the Everglades, a slow-moving river of grass that filtered and dispersed the water across hundreds of miles, all the way to Florida Bay. The dike cut that off. The Everglades were drained for agriculture. The land between the lake and the remaining wetlands was converted into the Everglades agricultural area, hundreds of thousands of acres of sugarcane and vegetables. Farming at this scale requires fertilizer, and fertilizer contains phosphorus. For decades, agricultural runoff flowed into Lake Okeechobee. Phosphorus, essential for plants and devastating in excess, sank to the bottom and accumulated in the muck year after year, decade after decade. The shallow lake acted as a settling pond, and nothing was leaving. By the 1990s, scientists were warning that the lake contained a massive reservoir of legacy phosphorus, and that one day something would wake it up. They were right. The east or west choice. Here is the trap nobody is talking about. Lake Okeechobee cannot overflow its banks. The Herbert Hoover Dike prevents that. But the lake must be managed within a specific range of water levels. Too high, and the aging dike risks failure. Too low, and the lake's ecology collapses. When the lake rises above safe levels, the Army Corps of Engineers has only 2 options. Release water east through the St. Lucie Canal to the Atlantic, or release water west through the Caloosahatchee River to the Gulf. Both options are ecological disasters. The St. Lucie River flows through Florida's Treasure Coast and empties into the Indian River Lagoon, one of the most biodiverse estuaries in North America. It supports over 4,000 species of plants and animals. It is not designed to receive massive pulses of fresh water from a eutrophic lake. When Okeechobee water is released eastward, it disrupts the salinity balance marine species depend on. Worse, it brings the phosphorus and nitrogen that fuel explosive algal growth. The result is toxic cyanobacteria blooms. Green slime coats the surface. Fish kills number in the millions. Manatees starve as the seagrass beds they depend on are smothered. The 2016 bloom on the Treasure Coast was one of the worst environmental disasters in Florida history. Governor Rick Scott declared a state of emergency. Beaches were closed, tourism cratered. The Caloosahatchee on the west coast faces the same dynamics. Releases toward the Gulf feed red tide events. A different bloom caused by Karenia brevis, which produces neurotoxins that kill fish by the millions and cause respiratory problems on shore. The 2018 red tide event killed over 2,000 tons of marine life along Florida's Gulf Coast. Dead fish, manatees, dolphins, and sea turtles washed up from Naples to Tampa Bay. Both coasts have been held hostage to Lake Okeechobee for decades, but December 2024 was different, because in December 2024, something started moving down there. The book did not account for this. The release operation that began in December 2024 was planned according to standard procedures. The Lake Okeechobee System Operating Manual called for maintaining water levels within a specific target range. The release was scheduled to lower the lake by several inches over a period of weeks. Modest rate, off-peak season. Everything was done by the book, and get this, the book was wrong. What the manual did not account for was what was sitting at the bottom of the lake. The release involved drawing water from Okeechobee and sending it down the canals. Moving large volumes of water creates turbulence, and turbulence stirs sediment. Under normal circumstances, that disturbance is minor, nothing catastrophic. But Okeechobee sediments are not normal sediments. They contain 70 years of accumulated agricultural runoff. The phosphorus concentrations in the lake bottom muck are among the highest ever recorded in a natural water body. Add to that decades of dead algae, decomposed plant matter, and the accumulated biological waste of every cane field upstream. When the December 2024 release began, the disturbance was worse than anything modeled. The sediments did not just stir, they mobilized. Something woke up at the bottom of the lake and started moving. Clouds of legacy muck rose into the water column and mixed with the water flowing down the canals. As that muck-laden water moved downstream, the organic matter in it began to decompose. Decomposition consumes oxygen. The water leaving Lake Okeechobee in December 2024 became hypoxic within hours. In some pockets, anoxic. No oxygen at all. And it was carrying tannins. The same compounds that give tea its color. The water turned brown, then black. The plumes, visible from space. At a NOAA imagery desk in College Park, Maryland, an analyst pulls up the Landsat overlay alongside the Sentinel-2 image. The plumes are spreading like ink through the St. Lucie and Caloosahatchee rivers. Within 48 hours of the release, they are dark enough to be picked out from orbit. Within a week, the black water has reached the Atlantic and the Gulf. The worst part? The samples. A Florida DEP scientist on the Treasure Coast pulls a bottle from the St. Lucie. The water inside is the color of strong coffee. Dissolved oxygen reading near zero. Phosphorus off the charts, higher than anything previously recorded during a release event. The legacy mud at the bottom of the lake is now flowing toward both coasts. Fish swimming into these plumes suffocate within minutes. The bacterial concentrations suggest enough decomposing organic matter to fuel algal blooms for months. The phosphorus in that water is fertilizer. Once it reaches the estuaries, it will feed an explosion. The Florida Department of Environmental Protection issues health advisories along both the Treasure Coast and the Lee County coast. Swimming discouraged, fishing warned against. Those advisories remain in effect. The coasts collapse. A charter captain on the St. Lucie River steps onto his dock at sunrise. The water is the color of dark chocolate. He has worked this river for 22 years, and he has never seen it like this. He cuts the engine and just stands there. The fish kills begin almost immediately. Mullet, snook, bait fish, belly up along the riverbanks. The smell of decomposition spreads across waterfront neighborhoods. The Indian River Lagoon, already stressed from years of nutrient pollution, takes another massive pulse of phosphorus and nitrogen. Seagrass beds, the foundation of the entire lagoon, and the feeding grounds for manatees are smothered. Sunlight cannot penetrate. Photosynthesis stops. The grass dies. And get this, manatees in the lagoon were already dying in record numbers. Over 1,100 manatees died in Florida in 2021 alone, most from starvation after seagrass die-offs. The December 2024 event threatens to trigger another mass mortality. On the West Coast, a biologist on the Caloosahatchee watches the same payload spread into San Carlos Bay and around Sanibel and Captiva. Red tide had been present at low levels along the Gulf. The nutrient pulse from Okeechobee gives the Karenia brevis exactly the fuel it needs. Within weeks, red tide concentrations spike along the Lee County coast. Dead fish on beaches, respiratory irritation reported. The 2018 red tide caused an estimated $184 million in losses in Lee County alone. December 2024 hit both coasts at once. No fix. The question everyone is now asking is simple. Can this be fixed? The honest answer is no. The phosphorus that accumulated in Lake Okeechobee's sediments over 70 years cannot be removed. There is no practical technology for extracting legacy nutrients from lake bottom muck at this scale. The contamination is permanent. It is part of the lake now. The only options are management strategies that minimize disturbance. Keep the lake stable. Avoid operations that create turbulence. Accept that certain actions are now off the table because the consequences are too severe. Here is the catch. Those strategies conflict with everything else. The Herbert Hoover Dike is aging. Sections of the 143-mile levee are at risk of failure during major storms. When lake levels rise, releases become necessary for safety. Climate change is intensifying Florida's rainfall. Wet seasons are wetter. Hurricanes are stronger. The frequency of high water events is increasing, and 8 million people still depend on the lake for drinking water. The system is trapped. Keep the lake high, and the dike is at risk. Lower the lake, and the legacy plume moves again. Send water south to the Everglades, and the wetlands take a nutrient hit. Send it to the coasts, and the estuaries collapse. Every option is bad. December 2024 just showed us how bad. The Comprehensive Everglades Restoration Plan, authorized in 2000, is a more than $10 billion federal-state partnership designed to restore natural water flow through South Florida. The plan is decades behind schedule. The reservoirs that were supposed to store and treat excess Okeechobee water are still unbuilt. The legacy phosphorus is still in the lake. The sediments are still there. The next time water managers need to lower the lake, the same dynamics will play out. Black water will flow toward the coasts. The only variable is how severe each event will be. Lake Okeechobee, big water, has been the beating heart of South Florida for centuries. The Calusa fished its waters. The Seminole navigated its marshes. Now it is a reservoir of buried poison, waiting for the next disturbance to wake it up again. The wall we built around it after the 1928 hurricane was supposed to make the lake safe. It made the lake a trap instead. Everything that flowed in stayed in. It settled to the bottom, and it waited. In December 2024, we disturbed the sediments. What came out was 70 years of accumulated damage compressed into a single event spread across 2 coastlines, visible from space. There is no solution. There is only management, and management just failed in front of every satellite watching. Lake Okeechobee is big water. What is moving beneath it is bigger, and it is not staying at the bottom anymore. If you made it this far, here is the question I cannot stop thinking about. If every option is bad, which would you choose? Risk the dike or poison the coasts? Drop your answer in the comments. If this story made you look at South Florida differently, hit the like button so the algorithm shows it to someone who needs to see it. And subscribe because there is more buried in this state than anyone wants to admit. And we are just getting started digging it up.